Welcome to another Hope, Power, and Healthcare. This is a special episode because there has been an intense demand for more Melissa on the show. So we are bringing double the Melissa this week. So welcome to another Hope, Power, and Healthcare with first Melissa
Reilly.
And
Melissa Fors Shackelford.
All right. Double the Melissa, double the fun, and double the insights and authenticity and investigation. I'm super happy to be on board with both of y'all, especially like Melissa Fors Shackelford. I want to brag on you just for a second that when it comes to your voice in addressing behavioral health and mental health stigma and addressing the conversational topics that are taboo, and in addressing substance use disorder. I remember we met while you were at the Hazelden Betty Ford Foundation, and those have been some very impactful learnings and thinkings about how we address stigma in mental health. So I just want to say thank you for continuing to be a voice in that aspect of this sector.
Well, and thank you, Chris. You always are raising all of these, the mental health and substance use you're raising the voices that we have in behavioral health. And it's oftentimes shoved to the side of healthcare. So I just applaud you, and obviously Melissa Reilly. Both of you do so much to just raise the conversation in this space and make sure that all of behavioral health is included in our healthcare conversations.
Well, thank you so much. And y'all, whoever watched the episode we had last week with Emily Brown, we're kind of liking this format of taking big thinkers and just riding along with a typical episode. So we get we want to get Melissa deep into your perspectives and background, and then we'll do our normal catch up and roundup, but it'll have that angle of like people will know what angle you're coming from and reacting to with all this news going on. How does that sound?
That sounds great. I can't wait. I just love hanging out with both of you. This is amazing.
Yeah, so Melissa and I have one shared client that we hang out with a lot, and there's another Melissa in that client, and so we just love that call. We're always trying to find more Melissas, so we could have like 4 Melissas on one call. Like we almost have that figured out.
Yeah, you can't have too many Melissas. I mean, Chris, you're probably on lots of calls with lots of Chris's, but for us, it's a special thing.
Exactly. You can throw a rock and find a multi-Chris call, but a multi-Melissa, like this is the place to be. Nowhere else, no other podcast but this one.
Unbelievable. For those that don't know you, Melissa, do you want to just start with like a little bit of an overview of your background? And I have a copy of your awesome book with me. It was one of the things we talked about in our roundup around our like favorite TV or reading moments of the week. And so we'd love to hear a little bit about you. And even if you want to wander into like what inspired you to write a book. I know a lot of our fam out there are contemplating book writing.
Oh, yeah. And I encourage everybody to do the book because why not? Everybody says they're going to do it. Just go ahead and do it. And so my background, like Melissa, I've been around healthcare for a long time. I started off on the payer side at Optum, and I am a marketing and growth person. So there I was leading marketing, selling to payers. From there, I went to the provider side of healthcare to sort of round out my healthcare expertise, and spent a long time, almost a decade, at Hazelden Betty Ford, leading marketing and strategy there. And that's really, I think, where I fell in love with all things behavioral health, all things substance use disorder and mental health. From there, I went over to an organization I think all of us are familiar with, Evernorth Health Services, and I led marketing at Express Scripts PBM. So again, another side of healthcare. Evernorth has done a lot around behavioral health, much of it through Melissa's work there. And since then, I've been working with emerging companies, really bringing my consulting and growth background to them, a lot in the behavioral health space or health tech space. And it's just really, how do I help them supercharge their growth? And I tell you, while I was at Hazelden Betty Ford is where, like I said, I fell in love with behavioral health, but I also saw the problems that you have. Your competition isn't another treatment provider. It's really families that do nothing. And so that's where I think that's the work you guys are doing, the work that I do, that the work that so many do, that we can just break down barriers. There's so many barriers to getting to care, and there's good care available. And thank you, Melissa, for bringing out my book. I'm very proud of it. Came out just a little bit ago, but I tell you, for a long time, I've talked to other people and really admired other people in my life that have books. And I wish I had one sitting here But there was a gentleman that really inspired me, actually another former Optum person. And his name is Eric Harkins, and his book is, if I get it right, I don't have it sitting here, Great Leaders Make Sure Monday Mornings Don't Suck. And really he has in there kind of the no asshole rule. And I've heard Melissa, quote that too. I was so inspired that he did that, and I just thought, yes, I can do this too. So I just started like a year ago putting my thoughts down, and I had somebody help me kind of package it up and put it together, but then I'm just really excited. In the first couple of weeks, it hit number 1 on Amazon in 2 categories, well, for 2 days, but it still hit number 1, so I'm very, very proud of that.
Absolutely killer. So you're hitting number 1 in Amazon in multiple categories and not an asshole, which means that nice people can finish first, right?
That's why this podcast is so amazing, because it's nice people finish first. And I think that's what it's all about. We need to cull those assholes from our life and focus on the good. That's where you get hope, power, and healthcare.
I want to ask just super quick. I'm curious. I don't know the specifics on the no asshole rule, but I feel like a lot of people need to hear that to clean that out of their lives. What's the no asshole rule? How does that work?
Well, it's kind of that assholes are assholes and they're not going to change. And so really you need to get rid of them. And I'm whispering because not that there's anybody here who can hear me that, but that's really what it's all about. And I think we all know that when you're trying to look at things like employee engagement and having high performing teams, and when you have one bad apple, it really, really, truly does ruin the whole barrel of apples when you have that one. And I think we've all, you don't get to this point in your career without having experiences there. And so that's where I love Eric's book. I mean, we could link it, but that was really what inspired me. I thought, gosh, he's putting down all his knowledge into a book. And mine is really about things that I know, which are purpose-driven marketing, mission-driven marketing, and how do you bring authenticity into your branding and your marketing.
Well, not to get too data sciencey, but some people do say that you are a reflection of the 5 people that are closest in your circle. So if you have 2 assholes in that circle, then you're 40% asshole. So just be careful with that.
Yeah, you have to bring the data in, Chris. That's right.
I was just so inspired on page 58, where it talks about these values and rewards of a high performing team. And it really comes beyond this idea of the shared sense of achievement, because, I think about Chris, you and I have started to become this high performing team, and we just start, sharing ideas and, how can we help each other and take a look at this. And I just feel like it's such an intentional culture, right? And like knowing that you've got someone that will have your back is so amazing.
I love our culture, and I love our, even though we're not officially a business together, it's the fact that we can trust each other to have each other's backs and make sure that when there is something we're collaborating on, then then everybody's reliable. Love that.
Well, you think about the psychological safety. When you have trust with each other, you have psychological safety, and so you're willing to take risks. You're willing to be vulnerable. You're willing to bring out those ideas you might not have brought out otherwise. And that's where having that kind of safety and trust with a team, and when you have that common mission, it's amazing. I think you guys have all been on lots of teams like that. I have too. It's magic when you have that.
Yeah. And Melissa, what about when you run into an asshole or you don't have a high performing team? Does your book help us with some tips around what to do when you don't have it?
Well, part of it is taking the risk to march with your feet. Sometimes we all have to do that. And I think that's something that I've done. I think something that you've done. Sometimes you just have to march with your feet. But not everybody's in a situation where they can do that and take that sort of a risk to say, listen, this isn't an environment that I want to be a part of. So what I like to do is look for the good, because there's always some good. Even before I came to healthcare, for example, I worked at Honeywell for a while, big global manufacturing company. And we made thermostats, and thermostats aren't really sexy, but our team was really nice. I had some great people. So it wasn't about the mission of the company that I was so much drawn to, but I could still have good coworkers that they collaborated with. And when you have the asshole, because there always is, and I don't want to name companies, but some people will understand. And with that, I think if you can't get away, then it's really about finding the good and finding the people, like you're saying, that you can trust, that you can collaborate with, and you can have that sense of psychological safety.
Melissa mentioned earlier about people that are listening to us and they want to start something, maybe start writing a book or start something else, start a business or what have you. You've done both. Can you help our fam march with their feet and start these things? Like what was your process there?
So I will say on both fronts, I have built a strong community and a strong network, and that's really where I draw inspiration. Like for the book, I'd always wanted to do it. I never really did it. And I mentioned Eric Harkins wrote this book. It was great. And I really was inspired. And I sought him out and I asked him zillions and zillions of questions about it. And then I kind of forged my path, but I kept talking to other people and gleaning their knowledge. Same with working as a consultant. Same thing. I reached out to many people, including Melissa, to ask questions to see how they did it. And I wouldn't have been able to do anything or even feel like I could take those leaps if I didn't first have that network of trusted people in my life. And so for me, that's really what it is. It's like it takes a village. It looks like I did these things on my own, but absolutely positively did not. And it's the things that I think that I am really, really grateful for, to have those kind of people in my life that support me, cheer for me, and also let me pick their brain and give me advice along the way. And that's really what I think it works. Beyond that, I think some of us just need to, it's a Nike just do it kind of scenario. A lot of people, I actually just this morning talked to a guy that I met through somebody else in my network who said, oh, I wrote a book and I just have it sitting on the shelf. What should I do? And we had this great chat, and I thought, you know what, other people talk to me about this, let me talk to you about this. And it's part of that. If you have something you want to do, why not just do it and take the risk? And these days with your social media platforms and the web, all these things you have, you can do a lot of things that you couldn't have done 5, 6, 10 years ago.
This harkens back to our first episode, which was don't gatekeep yourself. And it was so interesting this week. Somebody asked me, kind of in a similar vein, Melissa, like, how did you do it? And they asked me something I thought was really like a very perceptive question. They're like, well, were you scared? Like when you did it, were you scared? And to me, it goes back a little bit to the psychological safety. And I thought about it for a moment and I was like, oh, you know what? I don't think so, because there's probably worse moments in my life. And maybe like that activation moment when you finally said, hey, you're going to do it. I think I was so excited by like the vision of what I was building. I didn't have the moment to be scared, but I know it is scary. And maybe for people that are a little more risk adverse than myself, I think it can be really scary. So Melissa, do you have, or Chris, because you both have really done some of this, A, were you scared? B, if you were, what helped you walk through that moment of fear to activate?
Chris, you want to go first?
Well, I was going to let you go first, but I'll jump in. So Melissa, before I jump in though, there was something that you said on the first episode about what people on the top do versus what people on the bottom do. What was that?
It is that people at the top are collaborating and the people at the bottom, they're competing.
So when I went into it, like that first episode, we did that around the time that I was just getting started. And I was scared. I was like, well, do I choose the path of a singular and apparently stable revenue stream, or do I like seek out this opportunity in multiple ways? And keeping that concept in mind, everything that has come since then, the clients that I've engaged with, the opportunities, the fact that we're doing this podcast has been like just really being able to focus in and value the people within my network. So I was given a fabulous opportunity at my previous job to do some podcasting and external facing communicating there. And that's helped build out a good group of friendships that have been able to support along the way. I want to throw one thing else out too, which is a few episodes ago, we did promise that we would have a Discord community where people can like just chat with other innovators and things like that. And it does seem like we should really like get that going and provide that network, which is not allowed to have assholes, but provide that network where people can like hop on and have discussions and meet other people in the same boat.
I was just going to say, it really is all about collaborating, like you said, Melissa.
Well, I was going to say for people old like me, Chris, that maybe didn't know what Discord was when you first brought it up, how does one get to the Discord? How do they Discord?
By the time we have this episode up, we will have a place where you can, like, we'll provide a link down in the show notes that'll make it easy to log on to Discord. And the beauty of it is, like, once you've logged in, you're not having to create a whole bunch of different accounts like you would with Slack. You're just in there, and the stuff that you're interested in talking about, you can jump into communities without having to do a whole bunch of rigmarole. It's actually a very easy process.
Okay, perfect. And we'll also include a link to Melissa's book in case people want to grab that too. I just think marketing, and either marketing yourself and marketing what you're doing or doing marketing on behalf of your clients, is just so, so important.
So I answered your question first. You want to throw it at Melissa?
Oh, okay. So I think for me, when I think about being afraid of things, what I know through history is every time I do something I'm afraid of, I get stronger and I grow. And so it kind of, for me, goes back to I did a marathon when I was 20. And I just remember crossing the finish line saying, and I wasn't the fastest person, but I crossed the finish line and I remember thinking to myself, I can do anything I put my mind to. And I've really kind of lived with that. And I hearken back to that feeling a lot because I know after that I moved to like Japan by myself. And so I did a lot of things that I might not have if I didn't realize that I could do things. And a few years ago when I thought about going on my own and leaving corporate life, I just wasn't ready. And then I was like, oh, could I do it? I wasn't sure. And there's a gentleman who's really well known in a lot of healthcare marketing. Chris, you might have met him at HMPS. His name is Chris Boyer. And
yeah.
Chris is amazing. And Chris was just really encouraging to me that I could do it. And so that's where I also think it goes back to the collaboration because, again, my network gives me confidence. My network gives me that hope. My network gives me so much, and that's where I like to, as much as I can, give back to my network. And Chris was just another one of those that gave me the courage that said, yes, you can do it, and I needed that.
Shout out Chris Boyer, shout out Touchpoint Podcast. That's the podcast that he runs with Reed Smith. It's oriented to the healthcare marketer, but everybody gets value from the fact that they're so focused on experience, optimistic about technology, but cautiously. Like they want, since he's led so many efforts at these major institutions, he wants to help others do the right way. So shout out Chris Boyer and the work that you're doing.
Oh no, Chris is amazing, and what he does with the digital strategy that he brings to healthcare systems is amazing. But him as an individual, as a supporter, as a key person, at least now in my network, it turns out he lives on the other side of the lake that I live on. It was just wonderful, kind of serendipitous. But that's, I think, for me, when I'm feeling fearful or really unsure, I need to look back and say, yes, you know what, I can do hard things, and my network's going to help me along the way.
Oh, I love that. And did both of you have detailed business plans when you got started? That was another question I got this week, and I was like, I know one person that had a really detailed plan, and I maybe had no plan. So I do now.
So, Melissa, I actually got a business mentor to help me, and I wouldn't say the plan is complete, but we've worked on it over the last couple of months, and it's been wonderful. I just really hit the jackpot with my business mentor.
I love that. Was your business... Go ahead, Christy. No, I was going to say, I thought Melissa was your business mentor from the WBL.
No, but it certainly could have been, yes.
Oh, that's great.
What a wonderful organization that is.
The WBL, what is that?
Melissa and I are both members and actually got to spend some time together through a WBL Women's Business Leader event. Melissa's super well connected within the leadership, and I appreciate her advocacy there. There are other similar organizations out there. I know some people are in Chief and others, but I've enjoyed that community a lot.
Yeah, you guys should link to it if you want to. It's Women Business Leaders in Healthcare, and I just think it's the best organization for women in healthcare. And part of their mission is to get more women in the C-suite and on boards in healthcare, and to have no cold calls in healthcare. And when you look at the organization, the reach is super broad, and the support is there. So there are definitely organizations like that out there that are giving back as much as, for me, I receive a ton from it too.
So what we've got here today is we've talked about how to create community around yourself, how to align yourself with the right people, and we're providing some specific sources for that community on your own journey. So excited about that, and also excited to just catch up and go through our typical episode stuff. Melissa, how was your week?
My week was awesome. I love the close to the last week of the month always, because it's what are we now? Like, we're 6 months in to the year. So for me, it's always a super reflective month to say, how am I doing against my goals? Like a check-in with myself. How am I feeling? How has this year been? And I was telling someone else this morning that I have probably never had a first half of the year where I have smiled more. Like, this has been an awesome, amazing, all things are wonderful year. May was a little rough, but May aside, yay, I am loving 2025.
Were you have you been on the ground this week, or any travels or anything like that?
No travels. The piece that I have been reading in the industry that, maybe we can chat a little bit around is coming out of AHIP. There has been some positions that people are now taking. It's not codified per se, but, in the ether right now is all this talk around agreements around prior auth and how prior auth needs to change in order to make care more accessible, kind of where Melissa started. I definitely got 3 pings on like what's happening in the world of prior auth. For me, just personally, it's been a ton of... Oh, go ahead.
Can you give me 1 second? What is prior auth?
Oh, I'm so glad that you asked that question. My newly health plan minted person.
Oh, I have to ask for the fam. I mean, like, my coworkers.
Yeah, for those not familiar with prior auth is the thing I think that makes people hate healthcare the most. And so it's basically a mother may I. So when you get a prior authorization, it means it's a conditionally offered service. So let's take something like an expensive medication, or even sometimes some scans are prior authed. And what that means is you actually have to call up your insurance company. I think now you could kind of text, or your doctor can call, fax, send a carrier pigeon over to the insurance agency and basically say, here is my patient, or you say, here is my patient, here is my circumstance. I am requesting permission in order to have this drug, this treatment, and then the insurance company says yes or no. It's really done for 2 purposes. Legitimately, it's to control costs, right? And it's to potentially prevent fraud and to make sure that the right care is given at the right time. Melissa, what else would you add? Did I effectively market prior auth in the right way?
It is one of the reasons that people hate healthcare, because, well, my doctor said I can do this, but then the health plan says I can't. But if you look at it, assuming positive intent, yes, reducing fraud. I know back at Optum, one of the areas that I worked in was around fraud, waste, and abuse, and there's a lot of fraud, waste, and abuse. So from that perspective, it's a good thing, but when it's slowing down care and when it's used almost as a club to break down people, to not let people get care and to focus solely on the costs, that's the reason people see it as an impediment. And the other thing, I think, Chris, about prior auth is it feels so subjective. And that's one thing I know you do a lot around AI. I mean, you can just envision if they're doing it the right way and they're doing it for the right reasons and following guidelines, there's no reason why AI can't help to break down those barriers and take the subjectivity out of it, because that's the part that kills a lot of people, that it feels like if I make 4 calls to the health plan, I might find one person who approves it.
So the intent is making sure that we're using our limited healthcare resources and staff in the appropriate way, but the outcome has varied, and there have been all kinds of different approaches that have been a burden on consumers, a burden on providers, and it sounds like there's some news or a promise coming out of HHS. Melissa, that you'd referred to. What's going on? What's the big thing about how we're going to address this challenge?
Well, I would liken it to, in the same way we don't necessarily have standards around bundled payments across payers, or we don't necessarily all define a case rate in the exact same way for a similar condition. Prior auth is plagued by that exact same problem. So if you imagine like 1 year, you have to have a prior auth for this treatment, but then you switch plans and then there's a different, let's just call them a set of hoops you have to go through with another plan. It starts to create this level of frustration. And so in the same way, people have been kind of going after utilization management, which is almost like the umbrella over prior authorization. I think the HHS, the government, would like the plans to pledge to come together to craft some unifying standards around prior authorization with the thought that it'll make healthcare easier for consumers, or perhaps loosen some restrictions on things that prior auths are currently being used for. The challenge in these nice words and pledges, there's not a ton of details on exactly how all the people are coming together and what is going to change. Melissa?
Yeah, I think everything you're hearing everybody come out of AHIP saying, yes, we know it's a problem. Yes, we want to do something about it. But the question is, what is it going to be? And will there come any kind of teeth in it going forward? But I think nobody's going to argue that prior auth is working really well. And no consumer, when they really understand it, is a fan of it. So the fact that at least I think it's a win that the AHIP community is saying, yeah, let's do something about this. That sure feels like a win, especially when you think about the hope part of healthcare, of hope power in healthcare. The hope, I feel like there's a lot of hope there that things could change.
Who has a seat at the table?
That is a great question.
With regard to the people they're bringing together.
Yeah, I think that is a good question. I think that still remains to be answered. Yeah, I mean, they'll bring payers. Usually how things like this will start to happen is they'll start to roundtable or convene a group of payers together that have interests in this. You'll see some of the advocacy groups like ABHW or, AHIP even as an organization start to put out some thoughts on things. They'll start to look at things like an evidence base, because you always have to hopefully point to some type of evidence whenever you loosen rules. The rules were put in place. We talked about this on another episode. Like, you can't arbitrarily and capriciously just set rules around what care can be denied. You have to point back to some type of regulation or scientific literature that says this is the right amount of care, or too much of that care would be excessive or harmful to a patient. So, I mean, that's where it goes to, there's more work that has to be done. This is like a nice kumbaya moment.
I wonder, so you mentioned bringing payers and plans to the table, but what about providers and potentially consumer advocacy groups? Has that been talked about?
Well, I think in the context of what we were talking about, they were loosely gathering the payers. So you bring up a really nice point, Chris. You don't always get to hear from everyone else in the industry. And certainly, at least in some of the pieces that I were picking up, they're picking up the noise from some of these advocacy groups, and, they're reflecting that back in the problems. I don't know that the advocacy groups have to do a lot of the changing. I think they have a strong position on what needs to change. It's really the payers that have to lift up these rules, because the payers are the ones that set the rules.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of loud voices in this space, and there's a lot of unhappy consumers that have gotten really loud and get a lot of attention. So I feel like they've all had a voice, and I think that's where the advocacy groups and the patients who've been, or families who've been kind of harmed in this, because of this arena, I think they've all been pretty loud. And now finally, I think everybody's saying, let's do something about it.
I want to keep an eye on it. I think that when we were advocating for people to respond to CMS's call for innovation, there was a lot of good response to that. Is there anything similar that we can point people to just keep up with the news on this stuff and follow along and put the fam's voice out whenever needed?
I haven't seen that yet, but I think it's something certainly we can keep an eye on and keep, pulling things back as we get more regulated around this, I guess, for lack of a better word. There could be convenings, and that would be really wonderful to be able to get the fam involved. It's probably a space where every innovator should be watching, because it's so broad and sweeping in what they put limits on, like treatment limits. But I continue to be somewhat surprised sometimes by the early stage companies that don't fully, know how to look up clinical policies or guidelines, because they all have to be published. It's just knowing where to go grab them.
Well, hopefully the conversations that we're having and people seeing this, like we just want to let you know, like there's a place to be informed. There are places to be informed and find that voice, and we're going to keep you updated on that issue. What about you, Melissa Shackelford, on your week? Any news or client stories that have got you going?
Well, I think for me, my youngest stepdaughter turned 26 this week, so that's kind of the big thing at my house, actually, which for us is really exciting. But I think when you talk about the news that we're hearing, and one thing I think both of you are probably following too, is the concerns that a lot of us have seen about the news cuts at SAMHSA. And SAMHSA is what does SAMHSA stand for?
Substance abuse and mental health. Yeah, right?
Administration. And so they're talking about cutting $1 billion from their budget. And so I think when all of us have really been advocates in different ways for the underserved communities and really focusing on health equity. And when you don't have those dollars to support people with mental health and substance use issues, that trickles into all of healthcare. We know there's a huge percentage of all healthcare dollars that are spent. They're spent by people who also have behavioral health issues. So that one is a big concern, and I think it's just one, Chris, that I'm watching. A lot of us are watching to see what happens there, because when you're proposing such massive cuts to such an important convener and such an important organization that supports really the whole behavioral health field, that's something that we need to keep our eye on.
And it's a huge, unfathomable number, $1 billion to the type of support that, like, I was talking with Benjamin Gonzalez over at Geisinger Health. He leads a patient access program there. And I asked him, like, why is access the primary focus? And he said that because when you are dealing with substance use disorder and you finally have that time that you're ready to speak up and seek help and put those barriers aside, if at that time that door is open, the door to actually receive that help is closed, then that might be the end of your life. That might be the death sentence right there. And I wonder, has anybody done an impact analysis, or like $1 billion? What's going to happen?
Yeah. So while we can only anticipate the devastation that is going to happen as people lose this funding, I've actually been out trying to speak and talk to some of the groups who are going to be impacted by this, trying to figure out, well, what to do, right? So I do want to share some, like, what can you do's without getting political, because everyone knows I don't like to get political, but I do think there's action-oriented ways to get involved. But I'm worried for, going back to the Handmaid's Tale that we started on, I'm actually worried for what happens when you start to lose kind of this research and education mindset, right? Like these groups are learning. They're learning things that are going to help us be healthier and do healthier things and keep people healthier. And when you start to see that energy stop, what does that mean for the future of the space? That's where I start to get worried. We need to keep this research going, whether that means we need to mobilize and have more people join groups like SAMHSA, so that, or NAMI or others, right? We could start to put some of our own personal dollars towards it. We can advocate either through personal storytelling or policymaker engagement. Like this is one of those things where you can go to your state and local officials and grieve, right? Your voice is going to matter.
Well, thank you for sharing a path to have those voices heard. And again, for these types of issues, let's help let's help everybody realize that there is an influence, there is a lever, a role that you can play by speaking up and making that voice heard.
Yeah, Chris, I'm surprised you haven't gotten involved in this space yet. You know, have you spoken to anyone impacted by this?
Honestly, that's a really like that. I really think that the system failed. A close friend of mine a few years ago, where she was in an abusive relationship with someone who didn't have access to the support that he needed, and ultimately he like trigger warning for what I'm about to talk about. I'm about to broach the subject of murder, but yeah, there was just no support for the problems that he had. Like I knew a lot of his friends, and he killed her in the street.
Oh my goodness.
And yeah, then later that day, I mean, it's something that just, it feels like yesterday. Coco. But yeah, I've seen it, and the really sad part too is she would be up in Dalton, Georgia, every week, providing harm reduction, and like she had gone through some problems herself, and she was on the good end of the other side, and was doing things to help others that had dealt with substance use before. So it's a 100% tragedy, and the types of things that you share, that y'all share to raise a voice on this issue. I mean, it's not an issue that I've been directly involved in or really speaking up about, but happy to make sure that those kinds of resources are available. So happy to throw the hat in however possible, but yeah, it's a very close subject for me.
I think everybody's got a story, something like that. I mean, that's just tragic. It breaks my heart. And too many people have those stories when we think about whether it's mental health or substance use disorder, that, we know so many people are impacted in different ways, and people have all kinds of stories. And if it's not your immediate family, it's your friend, it's your cousin, it's your neighbor. Everybody's got these stories, and that's where we have made a lot of progress. And when we talk about defunding an organization like SAMHSA, all the good that they do, especially for those that don't have access in other ways, it's not gonna. We're just gonna end up hearing more stories like that, or other loss of life, or what have you, because there is care available. That's the whole thing. We made a ton of progress. There's care available. There's good care available. I know some of the work that you've done in advocating for even leveraging some AI in this space to help get more people care. I think that's what we need to focus on, is getting more people care versus cutting costs in this space.
There's the technology enablement part of it. And honestly, I mentioned Benjamin Gonzalez from Geisinger Health, and he's actually going to talk at Behavioral Health Tech conference in November about what they're doing to enable that access to. So there's the tech component, but there's also the systems and team component, and there's the convening, getting together, talking about the issue. And he's up there doing it not to just say, hey, Geisinger is doing a great job, but also get that feedback and talk to and network with other people that are also really focused on this issue.
Yeah, even on just the substance use disorder front at Health, the big STLTH conference this year, they're doing their first substance use disorder pavilion. And that really came kind of out of a conversation that they're doing a lot for behavioral health at the wide umbrella, but substance use disorder continues to be marginalized. And so they said, hey, let's highlight substance use disorder, and let's bring it out of the darkness and into the light, and let's make a statement that it is part of healthcare. And we have a lot of cool innovation, and we need to continue to get funding for a lot of these really, really forward-thinking innovators in this space, whether it's peer support, technology, AI. There's I talked to somebody who's participating, who's doing robotics. I mean, there's just amazing innovation happening, and getting conveners, like whether it's BHT with behavioral health tech or health or other opportunities to just have those conversations, and for people to remember we need fewer of those kind of tragic stories in the future.
And I noticed that you're leading a pavilion there.
Oh yeah, well I'm working with them on the pavilion to get the word out about it, and I love the fact that they're supportive and that they are saying substance use disorder is part of healthcare and it should be highlighted there.
So I did want to highlight as well that like we were just on the subject of behavioral health tech, and another thing that we like that they're doing is they're taking personal stories of people that are having challenges with college life and the intersect of mental health and disability. And every week they're coming out with a new story. The most recent one was on college and social media. And I thought that was just a good one to highlight because they took a more of an objective stance. It's not to like throw pitchforks at social media. It's to talk about the positives and negatives of that experience for that college student perspective. And the reason I think stories like that are important are just as innovators, as tech leaders, you want to know what's happening with people that are in a situation that maybe you were in about, in my case, 20-ish years ago, showing my age here. But just wanted to offer that up as a follow-up. We had announced the beginning of that series. They're continuing it on. And plus, for the fam out there, for the friends of the podcast, if you're an enemy of the podcast, stop listening. But the friends of the podcast, Hope 25 when you're registering for behavioral health tech, and that's a $200 discount. So they're trying to do as much as they can to get these stories out, and we really appreciate them offering Hope 25 to our fam. But with that, let's go to pop culture.
Pop culture. Can I go first? I have a great one.
Yes.
Okay. So I have been watching the Dallas Cowboys Cheerleaders season 2. And one of my most interesting mental health moments is the leader, she's like one of the points in the formation of the Dallas Cowboys Cheerleaders, ends up taking a mental health break and then comes back to the team, and the team ends up kind of embracing her at the end of the season, and she's very thankful to the Cowboys organization for giving her that mental health break. And so I really love to see kind of this normalized mental health break brought into the lexicon of something like that. But the other thing that was super interesting to me is when you actually look at like the level of pay that these women were getting and the level of dedication and just how much work they had to do in order to be on the squad. Like some people were holding down 2 or 3 jobs, then rushing to practice from 6 to 10 each night, then coming home and like having to clean their uniform. There's just like, this is like an elite athletic team endeavor. And you look at even this disparity in the pay that they were receiving, which now it has since been resolved, but it took them 65 years to be able to get the pay for these women to the same, to a livable wage to take on all this work that they're doing. And I was thinking to myself, well, no wonder they're all needing, mental health breaks at the end of it.
Seriously.
A lot. It's just a lot, so kudos to these women. No pun intended. I am cheering for them.
Fabulous. Absolutely fabulous. What about you, Melissa?
I will tell you, it's kind of a similar vein, but different. So I have a girlfriend who's an ER doctor, and she said I have to watch The Pit. And she said it's the most realistic ER show she's ever seen. And it's Noah Wyle from back in the ER days, so I was excited to watch it, and I just finished it. And there are so many mental health and substance use storylines. Like when I look back, I was trying to count them on my fingers. So there's a fentanyl overdose, which we all know is a tragedy in this country. There was one of the physicians had a panic attack, and they showed him very, very openly being vulnerable, dealing with his mental health issues. So sort of the same thing, Melissa. They had somebody with an ankle monitor, somebody who's in recovery, another doctor who was stealing patient meds for his back pain. Just so many different storylines. And for me, they weren't the center point. They were kind of just storylines in this ER show, which is really cool, by the way. I highly recommend it. But they were, when you say normalize, it's really normalizing these stories, and that's what we need more of. We don't need to have celebrities talking about it. We can just have it woven through the TV shows that we watch every day. And of course, ERs deal with a little bit more than the norm, but still, they made it in an interesting way. They didn't use negative stereotypes of anybody, and they really were normalizing a lot of these types of conversations. So, highly recommend The Pit.
I'm gonna throw something else out there. There's a podcast called The Gist Healthcare, which is a daily just update on something on news that's going on in healthcare. They actually interviewed the doctor that was consulting. So she was a UPMC physician, so right there in Pittsburgh, hence the name, The Pit, and she was influential in bringing up a lot of these health equity focused issues. And once she finally saw the show, she was so happy they took her recommendations, because you don't know if they're actually going to take your recommendations in that role. And they took stories that were directly from reality, and she said it's the most realistic depiction that you can find.
Yep, absolutely. My friend said too. That's amazing. I think it's powerful. It was a little gory, but it was really powerful.
And I guess to round it out, the Hope Power in Healthcare playlist on Spotify is now up. That's something we promised a few episodes ago too, but I took that playlist. So it's influential music that we hear from our guests that have influenced us as well, and it's from the top 40, the bottom 40, the middle. It's all kinds of music. It's a really diverse mix, but the theme and thread behind it is like what has like provided inspiration for the people recommending the songs. So I turned it on during a run. The run, I was gonna go 17 miles, and I didn't realize that it was 93 degrees outside, because I'm in Detroit, so I just assumed it was not going to be as hot as it is down in the South. It was rough. The run was absolutely horrid. But the one big thing that got me through was I listened to that I turned it on, shuffled it, listened to it in its entirety, and that music pulled me on through those nasty, smelly, sweaty, stinky miles.
17 miles.
Yeah, and Melissa, we'll put you on the spot. We had Emily tell us one of her favorite songs that gets her through really tough times when she doesn't have hope, and we added it to the playlist. What about you? Do you have a go-to song that maybe fires you up or calms you down in those moments you feel less than hopeful?
Oh, that's tough. That's really tough. I will just say what I put on just yesterday before I left the house. We put on Earth, Wind, and Fire, and I tell you, there's a lot of that old kind of R&B. It just really gets me going. So that's... I guess that's what I would say. I no longer run 17 miles, Chris. That's way in my past. But I think if I was doing that and I needed something to really pick me up, that's what I would do. Like an Earth, Wind, and Fire. Like September is the one that yesterday I flipped it on. And I was just like, this is such a great song. It just really gets me going. So that's what I would say. I thought you were just going to say, what's my favorite song? I thought, okay, I got that, but otherwise...
Oh, give us your favorite song, too. We'll throw that one in for good measure.
Well, you can, but that's a little slower one. I didn't realize you were doing them for...
Oh, there's slow and fast.
Oh, there is.
There.
Okay,
it's all about inspiration.
I will say, just because I can't ever get enough of it, I love Eric Benet. I think the world should know about Eric Benet. We just went to his concert. He's got a new album, but one of his oldies but goodies is Spend My Life With You. It was like the first dance at our wedding and stuff. But I just think the world needs to know more Eric Benet, because he's amazing. His songs are great, and I love everything he stands for.
Yeah, we love giving voice to amazing people doing innovative things. So thanks, Melissa.
Yeah, huge. And Earth, Wind, and Fire. Ooh, grew up on some of that stuff. That's on my soul and funk playlist. Like, let's put that on there. I can't wait to put it there. Thank you so much for joining us today and talking about building community and just being real about the problems that we're facing with stigma, mental health, and like what that really means for the people on the street that, you know, they might not have read about this $1 billion cut, but they have healthcare needs that could have some potential impact.
Yeah, thank you guys both for having me on. I just appreciate it so much. I think you're both you're doing so much. You're both good humans, and I've really loved getting to know both of you in the last couple of years.
Thank you so much. And our Power in Healthcare dog also, as we finish out, for the people that can see, this is Ophelia Bogoslawski, and she also wants to inspire the hope.
Yeah. Well, we're cheering for all our fam out there, and we'll see you all next week.
Thank you.